So, when I ask, what is Odoo? What comes to mind? Well, Odoo is a bit of everything. Odoo is a suite of business management software that some people say is like fertilizer because of the way it promotes growth. But some people also say Odoo is like a magic beanstalk because it grows with your company and is also magically affordable. But then again, you could look at Odoo in terms of how its individual software programs are a lot like building blocks. I mean, whatever your business needs. Manufacturing, accounting, HR programs, you can build a custom software suite that's perfect for your company. So, what is Odoo? Well, I guess Odoo is a bit of everything. Odoo is a fertilizer, magic beanstalk building blocks for business. Yeah, that's it. Which means that Odoo is exactly what every business needs. Learn more and sign up now at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
Welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast. I am so glad you're here. We challenge conventional thinking about customer experience because I believe that improving experiences isn't just good for business. It's a powerful way to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. Each week, we feature thought-provoking conversations with industry thought leaders from a variety of backgrounds, offering unique perspectives and actionable insights. Get ready to sharpen your leadership and transform your approach to customer experience. Let's dive in. Well, today on the Delighted Customers podcast, I am very, very excited to bring someone really special from the Starbucks world on the show, Mr. Howard Behar. Howard Behar's career in business spans over 50 years, all in consumer-oriented businesses covering several industries. He retired from Starbucks Coffee after 21 years, where he led both domestic business as president of North America, and he was the founding president of Starbucks International. During his tenure, he participated in the growth of the company from 28 stores to over 15,000 stores spanning 5 continents. He served on the Starbucks board of directors for 12 years before retiring. He's also authored 2 books on leadership titled It's Not About the Coffee and The Magic Cup. With that, Howard, welcome to the Delighted Customers podcast.
Hi, Mark. It's great to be here. Thanks for including me.
So I am so excited. I have to tell you, honestly, I am a patron of Starbucks and probably spent way too much money there.
It's all right. My grandchildren thank you.
Well, Starbucks has been on my wish list as a podcaster to speak to someone, and I was really blessed to get someone who actually did what you did there. I want to tap into a little bit about your journey and also explore it from a customer experience standpoint, if that sounds okay to you.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay, so in the book, which I enjoyed so much, It's Not About the Coffee, you said, famously, we're in the people business serving coffee, not the coffee business serving people. How did this philosophy shape Starbucks' approach to customer experience?
Well, when I first got there, we were in the coffee business. And when I got there, I thought, coffee is our product, but that's not the business we're in. We're 100% in the people business, both the people that work in the organization and the human beings we call customers. That we serve. And so I was trying to get everybody to understand what we were really about. So, words matter, language matters. And so I was trying to come up with something that everybody would understand. Amazingly enough, that little saying is alive and well after almost 40 years at Starbucks.
And when you say that, the saying, what were some of the key underpinning, strategies or activities that you initiated to begin to change behaviors there and mindsets?
Well, it was really just talking about it and showing the way and doing, people don't care what you say so much as they care what you do. And so I not only talked about it, but I acted that way. So, that's what drove it. When people saw what mattered, then they started to copy it. And it's not complex. You can't have rules. what you have to have is models. And that's what I try to do is I tried to be the model for that. And I just kept pushing it and talking about it and driving it home and explaining to everybody of why it was important. And then people started, just following on. And then after a while, what happened is, like attracts like. So we were recruiting lots of people to come in the organization. And the people that were there, they latched onto that it was about the people. And then the new people came in and realized what it was all about. And those are the people we recruited. So it wasn't so complex. You just had to constantly reinforce it, recognize it, and reward it.
Well, and speaking of people, just read that at the end of 2024, Starbucks Coffee had over 360,000 employees.
Amazing.
That's like a mid-sized city.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you were there, right, it was not that big. It was 28 stores.
Yeah.
And tell me about how you seemed to manage that rapid expansion and didn't dilute the personal customer experience that it was known for.
It was all about who you brought into the organization. Everything is about people. There is nothing at Starbucks that isn't about human beings. And so it's the people that made it grow. Once they understood the greater purpose of the organization, what we are trying to achieve, and I have another saying called the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom. And once everybody got that they had the responsibility for choosing their own broom, then they made it happen. I'd like to tell you that I did it or Howard Schultz did it. It wasn't us, it was the people that did it. Now, we knocked down the hurdles. We got the resources in place, and we gave the people a lot of confidence, and we supported them, and we rewarded them, and they did it.
Can you talk a little, you just mentioned hurdles. Can you talk about maybe, this could be a good lesson for other leaders as well. What were some of the hurdles that had to be knocked down before you could move forward?
Well, number one, we had to get resources. We had to get capital to expand. That was a big thing. But the most important thing is we had to get the right people in the organization. And so, we were out recruiting all the time. I said there was never somebody that I met that I didn't evaluate whether or not they would be good at Starbucks. I used to walk the malls looking for people, just talking to store managers and stuff like that. I found somebody good. I gave them my card and I told them to call me. So it was, the two primary things were getting the right people, as Jim Collins says, on the bus, and then getting the resources in place that you needed to do it. And those were big hurdles sometimes. Sometimes we chose the wrong people, and we had to make a change. And, at the beginning we struggled getting capital. But, after a while, we were raising money with local investors, and then we started to go to venture firms, and we raised our capital that way. And then, we had to get people to believe. A lot of people believe that it was a Seattle phenomenon. That, it's cold weather, it's rainy, everybody drinks coffee. But we believe that coffee was consumed everywhere, and we just followed that belief, and we started growing.
Was there something that you look for in a person? You mentioned you'd personally bump into someone, but as you guys grew, you'd have to develop some sort of, some sort of pattern or strategy that you told your leadership, hey, look for, maybe these are the kind of people we want to bring in. What were some of those characteristics?
They had to have empathy, right? They had to show vulnerability. They had to be kind, caring, and they had to believe that love belonged in business. And they had to have the requisite people skills. They had to have the human skills, social, emotional skills. And if they had those, then we could teach them everything else. Now, certainly we were hiring some skilled people in accounting and engineering and architecture and stuff like that. But primarily they had to have the human skills. They had to have strong social, emotional skills.
And you mentioned accounting and so forth, but are you also talking about leadership, some of these skills, some of these traits?
Yeah, they had to have leadership skills. But, we could teach them a lot of the ins and outs. But what they had to come with is a kind heart and with empathy. And we were a company that was driven by servant leadership. That we recognized, that leaders recognized that we were here to serve our people, not the other way around. And so we looked for people like that. When I interviewed, I didn't ask questions about how good their accounting skills were. Somebody else did that. I asked questions about, what do your parents like about you? What do your parents not like about you? If you have a brother or sister, what do they think of you? What do your parents wish you would have become versus what you became? What's the most difficult human interaction that you've ever had? What's a conflict that you had, and how did you solve it? I was looking for those kinds of things.
really interesting and a little bit counterintuitive to what you see today oftentimes.
Yeah.
But interesting. So, Sonia, can you talk about how you empowered your employees or partners in terms of delivering exceptional experiences?
Well, I used to say, just say yes, right? Find a way to just say yes. That's what got us. And if you look at Starbucks and the variety of things, a drink that will make it any drink any way you want it. Nobody was doing that. And so I was in the mode of just find ways to say yes. No matter what the question was, say yes. Now, obviously there's some things that got requested like, that we couldn't comply with, but we never said no. We just said, well, that's not something we could do, but we can do this. And so we were always looking for ways to say yes to the people that we were serving. And when you do that time after time, people want to come back. Other things that we did, remember the program Cheers, where everybody knows your name?
Right, the TV.
Yeah, so we encouraged our people to become familiar with the people that we're serving. If you had somebody that was coming in day after day, it behooved you to know who they were, what their drink was, and to build a relationship. And so, even though we're just serving coffee, it's still about relationships. It's still about people, and it's still about serving another human being. And so when you do that with the same love in your heart that you have for the people that you work with, then it transfers and people recognize it. We weren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, still not perfect, but that was always the attempt.
Howard, I want to go rewind a little bit to what you said. You used the frame servant leadership, and I think we can assume we know what that means, but I'd love to double tap on that and let you share what you mean by servant leadership.
Well, to me, there's 3 steps to servant leadership. The first step is that you help your people grow as human beings. That's number 1 and the most important. Number 2, you help them grow as professionals, be better at what they do. And number 3, you help them achieve their own personal goals in life. And when you do that, then they want to serve your organization because they realize that you care about them. And, I always try to give them recipes, not rules. Say, here's what we're trying to achieve. You may like carrot cake, but not like carrots. So maybe you don't want to put very many carrots in the carrot cake, right? Maybe you like lots of frosting. So you can have carrot cake your way. And that's what we try to do to our people. And so we try to treat everybody with the same respect and dignity that we expect to be treated ourselves. And people recognize that because after a while, that old saying, people want to know how much you care, not how much you know. Mm-hmm. And so we tried to show how much we cared. And that's what we did.
From a customer experience standpoint, Howard, when you were there, did you use or how did you use customer feedback? Did you have ways to listen and respond to what you were hearing from customers? How did you go about that?
Well, in the early days, there was no technology there to do what we wanted. But we had customer comment cards that customers would fill out. I myself personally would read every customer comment card. Mm-hmm. And then I would hand them out at the start of every staff meeting. We would go around, maybe there were 15 or 20 people, and I'd hand out customer comment cards just randomly. Nobody knew what they were going to get. Maybe it was part of their responsibility, maybe it wasn't. And then they would read the card and we would talk about it. The goal wasn't to look to blame anybody. It was to make sure that we understood what was going on and we were hearing firsthand. And then, there's nothing like being in the stores. I was traveling all the time. I was in the stores all the time. And I would go sit down with customers. And I'd ask them, what do you like about Starbucks? What don't you like about Starbucks? What do you wish we would change about Starbucks? I asked those 3 questions to all the baristas and store managers. And after a while, you learn what's working, what's not working, and you make small adjustments along the way to make that happen. And so, it's not that. Now everybody uses all the technology. I'm not so sure that that's so great. I think there's nothing like the human interaction, the human conversation to really dig down deep because people are not just checking boxes. How was your meal? Was your meal good? Yes, no, maybe. Now it was, what did you specifically like about your meal? What didn't you like about your meal? What do you wish we would have done better with that meal or that cup of coffee? And so there's nothing like that. And I think leaders today miss that. They're looking for the easy way out. And there's really no good easy way out. you really need to go in and dig, and you need to build relationships. You need to ask questions. You need to listen to the answers, not just with your ears, but with your eyes and with those little antennae we have on our head.
CX professionals know that every touch point matters, but managing the entire customer journey can be challenging, especially for enterprises due to disjointed data, difficulty aligning stakeholders, and struggling to secure executive support. That's where JourneyTrack comes in. JourneyTrack integrates journey mapping, management, and measurement, allowing you to pinpoint friction, optimize experiences, and demonstrate the ROI of CX initiatives. So you can align teams, break down silos, and then you can track improvements in real time. With JourneyTrack, you get visibility across every channel and touch point. No more guesswork, just clear insights and measurable results. Join the CX leaders who transform journeys into improved experiences with impactful business outcomes like reduced churn and increased customer lifetime value. Visit JourneyTrack.io today and see how better journeys lead to better business.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
Excellent. Okay, so Howard, you're expanding, you're growing rapidly back in these years. And I'm wondering, as you grow, and you've got lieutenants, sergeants in the field, they are vying for resources for their area of the business. This is very similar to a CX leader who is vying for support resources to try to either redesign an experience that's not going well or could be getting better, responding to customers' friction points, etc., and trying to get resources to do their job. And yet there's a bunch of birdies who also want money. When you thought about how to make decisions and support one of your leaders that reported up through either directly or through you, what were some of the key criteria that you used to say, yes, we're going to go ahead and support that?
Well, they had to present their cases, right? And they had to be performers. If you didn't performance matters in this world. Performance matters in servant leadership. You got to get the job done, and you got to achieve the commitments that you make. And so, we would certainly support with greater resources those people that were really getting the job done. But having said that, sometimes people weren't getting the job done because there was a resource that they didn't have. And so we had to listen. We had to really pay attention to what they were asking for and why they were asking for it. And I always thought that you had to take risk. I remember when I retired once at Starbucks. When I came back to help out in North America, the guy that was running operations in North America, a guy named Jim Alling, he said to me, I think that we're understaffing our stores. Well, I'm an old line retail. You didn't add staff until you had the sales. But he believed that we needed to add people in order to increase the sales. So I said to him, okay, I trust you. Let's take 300 stores and go and test it. Well, we did that. And lo and behold, he was absolutely right. We added people in the stores and the sales increased. We were understaffing our stores and unable to serve our customers well. And so sometimes you have to take chances and you have to take risks. And not everything you do will work. And so, you had to be just conscious of what your people were asking for, what your customers were asking for, and just paying attention. And then be willing to try things and be willing to make mistakes and have things not work.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that and the risk that you took and the willingness as a leader to listen to and give it an opportunity for one of your leaders there who really believed that they needed more people in the stores to support it. We hear a lot about the ROI of customer experience and having to prove that. And if you don't do that as a CX customer experience leader, you've failed, you have yourself to blame. And I know that there are several models, many models you could use, customer lifetime value and a whole bunch of others that you could use to justify the ROI of CX. And oftentimes, CX leaders get blamed for not doing a good enough job of basically proving the financial case. What would you say? I'm trying to get a sense of what you would say to that and how you dealt with that, again, among the chirping birds here who are vying for support and funding, the ROI piece of it. What would you say to the struggling CX leader who's having a tough time quantifying the return on investment?
Well, not everything you do can you put a number to, right? Sometimes you just have to believe. And you have to be aware of what's going on. That's why asking questions and being out in the field is so important. So I'll give you another good example. So I had a strategy that reported to me, and he believed at that time we didn't have ovens in our stores, warming ovens, and he believed that customers would like their pastries warm. Now I didn't have to be brilliant to figure that probably made some sense, right? I mean, I like a warm muffin versus something cold, Right. So I made a pitch to the CFO. I said, I want to put some warming ovens in the stores. We're going to test it. I forget the number of stores. It was maybe 200, 300, 400 stores we were going to test it in. And he looked at me and he said, well, you got to prove it to me first. I said, I can't prove it until I do it. And I can't just put 5 ovens in. I got to put enough in that we get a broad enough view of it. And he said, well, you can't have the money. And I just looked at him and I took my keys and I had my car keys on my desk. I pushed the keys across the table. I said, if you want to run the business, here are the keys. Sometimes you got to push. And because I didn't have a number to prove it, I believed in it. Many things you have to do. Not everything you do is going to have the answer or the solution written on the wall with all the numbers you need. And if you do this, you're going to increase sales by 50%. You don't know. Frappuccino, we brought Frappuccino in. It was a test. We didn't know. And Frappuccino, because we tested it, it became a $4 billion business. And so, sometimes you can get too caught up in the analysis. That old word, analysis paralysis?
Right.
Too caught up in the data.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way. If you go home tonight and you ask your wife, or you walk into the house and you ask your wife, how was your day, right? You don't need to, you can tell what her day was like without her saying a word, can't you? You don't need much analysis. You can just look at her face, right? Or if your wife says to you, honey, I'm unhappy in this marriage, how much more data do you need? Right? You don't need to do a whole research project to figure out you better fix something.
Right.
So, not that data isn't important. I'm not arguing against it. I just don't get frozen in that.
Yeah. When you were leading Starbucks North America and growing Starbucks internationally, you probably had the same situation where you're vying for the same sort of scarce resources like everybody else was. Can you think of a particular challenge that you had that you can look back now and say, yeah, that was a really big challenge? And one in particular maybe that you overcame?
I felt that we weren't paying enough to our baristas. We were basically paying minimum wage. So in order to do that, if I wanted to increase the wages in the stores, I had to figure out a way to pay for that some way. And so I ran all the numbers and we figured out what it was going to take to pay for it. And so we implemented it. We took it at a minimum $1 above minimum wage an hour, and we rolled it out. Well, lo and behold, we'd made an error in our calculations. We thought it was going to cost 1% of sales. It cost 2% of sales. Now I had a problem. I had to figure out how to fix it. But I wasn't going back, right? A deal was a deal, and I'd made the commitment, and we wanted to move it forward, and I truly believed. So we figured out how to solve the problem. We cut on some things. We raised prices a bit, and we figured out how to make it work. And it made a difference in who we could recruit. And so it was a problem. Howard Schultz was mad as hell. You can imagine when the P&Ls came out and he looked at those numbers. What happened? I thought you said, and I said, hey, we blew it, but we'll fix it. And I happened to be on vacation at the time. I had to come running back from vacation to figure out what to do, but we figured it out. But, those were the things that really, it was really about how we were serving our people. And sometimes those things cost money.
I have two more questions I want to ask, then I'm going to ask you the final question. It's all fascinating to me. I want you to, if you could, respond, share your opinion and thoughts about the recent Starbucks Back to Starbucks initiative under new leadership. I think September, the new CEO came in. Yeah. And what advice would you give to ensure they stay true to their roots while evolving to modern customers?
Well, I think it's using our history to inform our future. I don't think it's back to Starbucks. I think it's forward to Starbucks. But we can use our history and what we believe in to inform our future. And so what Brian is doing, the new CEO, he's basically saying, here are the things that we did before that we liked, like lots of chairs in the stores, and when it's appropriate to write a note on the cup and just saying thank you or whatever it happens to be, bringing the condiment stands back where people could put their own milk in their cups, and it was little things like that. But it's really the people-centric things that he's doing. COVID really did a lot of damage to us, because it was nobody knew what to do. We didn't know how to manage the business. We took chairs out of the stores because we couldn't have people sitting in the store, and all those kinds of things. But that's what I think that he is trying to do. And I really think that it's going towards the future of Starbucks, using our history to inform our decisions.
Excellent. Yeah. So many things, so much pride created. I mean, coffee was around forever, right? But somehow this, I don't know how many billion-dollar business, and I would argue it's all about the experience. A good coffee, yes, but wouldn't you say?
A lot of people, you can go a lot of places and get a cup of coffee that you like, right? At the end of the day, it's how you were treated. The product has to be good, right? Mm-hmm. And we have to make it the way you want it. But at the end of the day, how were you treated? Do you feel like you were cared about? Do you feel like you mattered? And that we weren't just trying to get your dollar bill, that we were actually trying to serve you in some way that made you feel better about your day. I used to say to our baristas that they were social workers, and they had 10 seconds to determine where that person was at that particular time in their day. Did they just get a traffic ticket that cost them $100 and that used up a big chunk of their food money for the week? Or did their kid just get a free ride to Harvard and they're waiting to be able to tell somebody because they were excited? So you had to pay attention,
And that goes back to the empathy that you were talking about.
Yeah, empathy. Yeah, exactly. Paying attention.
What advice do you have for maybe the young to mid-career person listening to the show about their careers? Like as you've had a full career now, what advice would you share with someone who's young and up and coming?
Well, first of all, you're not building a resume, you're building a life. It's really important to see it that way, because when you're building a life, then you're focusing on the purpose of why you're here, what you're trying to do, who you are. What are your values? What are the 8 to 10 core values that inform all the decisions and the actions you take? You should definitely have a personal mission statement. What is it you're trying to achieve with your life? And, I've done that. I've had that since I was in my mid-20s. And I have a document. I'll show it to you, but your audience won't be able to read it. But this is a picture in Howard of 50 words or less. I've had this since I was 27 years old. And on it has my personal mission statement, which goes like this: to live my life every day, nurturing and inspiring the human spirit, beginning with myself first and then for others. The reason why I say self first is because I've grown to understand after living this long that if you're not okay with you, it's very difficult to help somebody else. And then I have my 8 core values. And those 8 core values inform how I make decisions in life. And then how I do everything, my 6 Ps. Everything I do in my life has to have a purpose greater than myself, and everything I do has to be about serving people. And so that's how I try to manage my life, and I've written it down. I think you have to write these things down, because if you don't, then they just becomes wishes, hopes, and dreams. And then you have to have a plan. You should live your life with intention. Where are you headed? Why are you headed there? What is it you're trying to accomplish in your life? And I think at the end of the day, there is no job or title that you will have in your life that isn't about serving another human being. So that's what I would encourage young leaders to focus on. What's their greater mission in life? What are they trying to achieve? What are their core values? How do those core values inform the actions and the decisions that they make in their lives? And then have a paragraph or two of how you do everything in your life. And live your life with intention. Set goals. Have them written down. And, throughout all the aspects of your life, from your spiritual life to your material life to your personal growth to what you want to accomplish at work, have a plan.
I love that. Would you be willing to share that with me offline and we can put it in the show notes?
Yeah, sure. If you send a note to Kathy, she'll
we'll
send
do that. If you're listening or watching, we'll include that in the show notes for this episode. Howard, I've got one more question. I'd love to talk to you longer, of course, but maybe we'll have you, if you're willing, to come back on the show after a while.
Yeah.
But the question is, the name of the show is the Delighted Customers Podcast. What delights you as a customer?
That I feel somebody cares about me when I walk in. They're not trying to sell me something. They're trying to serve me. That's what delights me. And they make me feel better about myself when I'm with them.
Nice. Very nice. Howard Behar. The book, and actually there's two books, It's Not About the Coffee and The Magic Cup. What an awesome experience and what an honor and privilege it was to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Before we get off, I would like to give your audience my cell phone number and my email address in case somebody has a further question they want to ask. And my cell phone number is 206-972-7776, and you can call or text me. I'll always get back to you. It may take me a while, but I always get back. And my email address is hb, my initials, at howardbehar.com. So, I'm not in the consulting business. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to always reach out to people that if they have a further question, they're able to ask it.
That's so generous, and what a great example of servant leadership that is. Thank you. Thank you, Howard.
Thanks, Mark.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Delighted Customers Podcast. It would mean so much if you would take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts, click on the plus sign or follow button, and that will ensure that you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave a 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets, with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.